80,000 pounds. That is the legal weight limit for a loaded semi-truck in America, and at the top of Cabbage Hill in Oregon, that weight is about to drop 2,000 feet in 6 miles. No parachute. Just a driver, 2 pedals, and steel drums that can turn cherry red and quit working if he makes one wrong move. But here is what almost nobody outside the industry knows. The truck's regular brakes are not what saves it on that grade. Something else does nearly all the work. Start with the physics, because the physics is what makes this so unforgiving. An 80,000 pound truck rolling at 50 miles an hour carries roughly the same kinetic energy as a small aircraft at takeoff speed. On flat ground, a truck's drum brakes can shed that energy just fine, turning motion into heat and dumping it into the air. On a 6% downgrade, gravity is adding energy back in faster than the brakes can throw it away. Ride those brakes continuously for 6 miles and the drums can climb past 500 degrees. The steel expands. The friction material glazes over like a candle that has melted and reset. Truckers call it brake fade, and it doesn't creep up on you. It can vanish inside 30 seconds, and by the time a driver feels the pedal go soft under his boot, he may already be past the point where anything can stop him. There is also a mechanical detail almost no one outside the industry knows about, and it makes the fade problem worse than it sounds. An 80,000 pound truck does not stop with 4 brakes. It stops with 10 or more, one at every wheel across the tractor's axles and the trailer's tandem axles behind it, all of them wired to a single air system and expected to work in unison. Air brakes need a minimum pressure just to engage at full strength, and heat does not just glaze the friction material. It can also boil moisture inside the airlines and cause the whole system to lose pressure at once. That means brake fade on a mountain grade is rarely one brake failing. It is closer to 10 brakes losing their grip at nearly the same moment, which is exactly why engineers built the engine brake to work through the drivetrain instead. A system with no linings to glaze and no air lines to lose pressure, immune to the one failure mode that kills drums and shoes on a long descent. This is why nearly every long-haul driver descending a real mountain grade uses something most car owners have never heard of. It is called a Jake brake, short for Jacob's engine brake, and it turns the engine itself into the primary braking system. In a normal diesel cycle, air gets pulled in, compressed, ignited, and pushed back out as exhaust over and over, thousands of times a minute. Flip the Jake brake on, and the exhaust valve pops open at the exact top of the compression stroke instead. All that compressed air just vents straight out as noise and heat, so the piston gets nothing back on the return stroke. The engine stops producing power and starts eating it instead, and that resistance runs straight through the drivetrain to the wheels. It is the same reason a car engine slows you down when you lift off the gas, except scaled up to a 15-litre diesel and turned into a driver's single most important tool on a mountain pass. That staccato machine gun rattle you hear when a semi comes down a grade, the sound that gets Jake brakes banned outright in some small towns, is the sound of a driver refusing to touch his foot brakes at all. And that refusal is not stubbornness, it is survival math. A driver who runs the engine brake correctly can descend an entire 6% grade and never once heat his drums past a safe working temperature. Which means if something does go wrong further down, an animal in the road, a car spinning out ahead of him, he still has functioning brakes left to work with. A driver who rides the pedal the whole way down might arrive at the bottom with nothing left at all. Sit in the cab during an actual descent, and the theory turns into something you can feel in your chest. The engine brake's rattle is not subtle. It comes through the floor and the seat before it ever reaches your ears, a hard mechanical stutter that rises and falls as the driver works the throttle and the Jake settings together. The cab smells faintly of hot metal even when everything is working exactly as designed, because friction brakes still handle the fine adjustments around curves even with the engine doing the heavy lifting. Mirrors matter more here than almost anywhere else on the highway. A driver descending Cabbage Hill or Wolf Creek Pass is constantly checking them, not for traffic behind him so much as for smoke curling off his own trailer tires, the first visible sign that something under the truck is running hotter than it should. By the time smoke is visible from the cab, the margin has already started shrinking, and every second after that is spent deciding whether the next curve is one more turn he can make or the one where the ramp becomes the only remaining option. This discipline does not happen by accident or instinct. Commercial driver's license training in mountain states walks new drivers through mountain descent specifically, because the instinct that keeps you safe on flat interstate, easing off the brake pedal and letting the truck coast, is the exact instinct that gets drivers killed on a real grade. Dispatchers who route loads through Cabbage Hill, Wolf Creek Pass, or the Grapevine are supposed to flag those legs in advance so a driver knows a mountain descent is coming before he is already committed to it, because there is no safe way to improvise a 6% downgrade with 80,000 pounds behind you. The professionals who do this well are not adrenaline chasers. They are drivers who treated a piece of paperwork, a brake check at a weigh station, as seriously as the descent itself, because they understood that the boring part of the job is what makes the dramatic part survivable. But knowing the tool exists is not the same as knowing how to use it. And this is where the eastbound climb into Cabbage Hill starts mattering before the descent even begins. The rule veteran drivers repeat to rookies is simple, and almost nobody follows it under pressure. Whatever gear got you up the hill is the gear that takes you back down it. Climb at 35 miles an hour in 8th gear, and 35 in that same low gear is your ceiling coming down the other side, engine brake engaged, drums cool before the grade even starts. Wait until you are already on the downgrade to pick a gear and it is too late. You cannot safely downshift a loaded truck once it has picked up real speed. The transmission will not cooperate, and every second spent hunting for the right gear is a second the truck spends accelerating on its own. Cabbage Hill earns its reputation honestly. The westbound descent on Interstate 84 drops roughly 2,000 feet in 6 miles between mile markers 227 and 217, threading through double hairpin turns at grades up to 6%. Oregon's Transportation Department built a brake check station right at the top, mile marker 227, specifically so drivers can pull over, get out, and put a bare hand on their drums before committing to the grade. If the drums are already hot from the climb or from riding the pedal too much on the flats before it, that driver is starting the descent with less margin than he thinks he has. State figures put the numbers in stark terms. Roughly 78% of the commercial crashes on that hill involve carriers from out of state, drivers unfamiliar with the pass, and close to 60% of those crashes trace back to brake failure. This is not a hill that punishes bad luck. It punishes drivers who did not respect it going in. Even a driver who does everything right can still lose the fight, and that is what the runaway ramps further down the grade are actually for. Not a myth. 2 of them sit on Cabbage Hill at mile marker 221 and mile marker 220, positioned before the double hairpin at the bottom where a truck with no brakes left would otherwise have nowhere left to go. The picture in most heads, some kind of net or an inflatable wall, is wrong. The common design out west is what engineers call an arrestor bed, a long strip of loose, deep gravel angled slightly uphill off the main road. It is just rolling resistance, the same physics that makes it hard to sprint across a beach scaled up until it can absorb a truck. The looser and deeper the gravel, the harder the tires have to work to push through it. And the truck's own momentum burns itself out against 10,000 tiny collisions with rock, instead of one catastrophic one against a guardrail or a curve it could never make at speed. The length of an arrestor bed is not guesswork. Engineers calculate it from the truck's likely entry speed and its loaded weight, because a bed built for a 60,000-pound truck at 40 miles an hour will not stop an 80,000-pound truck doing 65. That is why some Western grades use a second design entirely, a gravity escape ramp, a long uphill lane running parallel to the highway that lets gravity itself do the braking, the same way a ball rolled up a hill eventually rolls to a stop and starts sliding back down. Either design works on the same basic promise. Give the truck somewhere to burn off speed besides oncoming traffic, a cliff edge, or a hairpin curve it cannot make. Some states pack the bed with pea gravel a foot deep, others use crushed rock closer to golf ball size, and maintenance crews groom it after every use, so the next truck that needs it gets the same resistance the engineers calculated for, not a rutted channel worn down by the last one. A driver who takes the ramp will very likely walk away. His brakes will not. Every truck that hits an arrestor bed needs a tow and a full brake inspection before it is legal to drive again, and that fact alone tells you how much force those beds are absorbing. Fog changes everything, so does ice. Weather turns all of this from a manageable risk into something closer to a lottery. In February of 2014, fog dropped visibility on Cabbage Hill down to almost nothing, and a chain reaction pileup near Meacham eventually swallowed roughly 16 vehicles, 9 of them semis, before Oregon's Transportation Department shut the freeway down for 2 nights straight.
Okay guys, here we go again. I-84, westbound and down.
8 years later, in February of 2022, ice turned the same stretch into a sheet of glass during the early afternoon, and Oregon State Police eventually counted as many as 98 vehicles caught in the resulting chain reaction, closing the interstate between Pendleton and La Grande until the following day. Neither disaster started with a single dramatic brake failure. Both started with a handful of drivers who could not see the truck ahead of them slowing down, and a grade that does not forgive hesitation once momentum builds. Colorado's Wolf Creek Pass tells the same story from the opposite angle, close enough in time that the contrast is hard to ignore. The west side of Highway 160 then drops through 2 hairpin curves on a grade that hits nearly 7%, and the Colorado Department of Transportation has posted a warning at the summit, blunt enough to stop you mid-step. If you over-brake it, you will not make it. In March of 2025, a trailing driver filmed a loaded semi coming down that grade with smoke pouring off its tires, brakes clearly cooked, sliding through both hairpins before finding the runaway ramp at mile marker 161 and burying itself safely in the gravel. Everyone walked away. 20 years earlier, almost to the week, a driver hauling a full trailer of beer down the same pass rode a failing brake system into that same ramp and lost most of his load, but not his life. Then, in November of 2025, a different driver on that same descent passed the first ramp entirely, a mile and a half from the summit, brakes already smoking according to state troopers. He never reached the second one, the ramp locals call the last chance ramp, built specifically above the worst of the hairpins for drivers who missed the first shot. The truck went through a guardrail and down the embankment, and the driver did not survive. 3 trucks, 1 mountain, 1 piece of engineering standing between all of them, and the same outcome. The only real difference was whether the driver used it. None of this is unique to one hill in Oregon. Donner Pass in California, Wolf Creek Pass in Colorado, the Grapevine outside Los Angeles. Every serious mountain corridor in the country runs the same physics and demands the same discipline. Match your descent speed to your climb speed. Engage the engine brake before the grade starts, not after the pedal already feels soft. Trust the sound of that staccato rattle over the silence of coasting. And know exactly where the runaway ramp sits, because the 6 seconds it takes to find it in a mirror can be the only 6 seconds a driver actually has. What almost never makes it into the conversation is how invisible all of this is to everyone else on the road. A car merging past a loaded semi on a 6% downgrade has no idea whether the driver beside them is running a textbook descent or riding a brake system that is already fading toward failure.
Nobody on the roads, so that's a street right there, and there's no cars passing by, so I'm the only one here by myself.
There is no dashboard light for the general public, no warning that flashes on the interstate. The only signal most drivers ever get is that rattling engine brake noise some cities have tried to ban for being too loud. The exact sound that means the truck next to you still has working brakes left in reserve. So the next time that sound rattles past on a mountain grade, it is worth asking what it actually represents. Not a nuisance, not a truck struggling, a driver who checked his drums at the top, matched his gear to his climb speed, and chose 80,000 pounds of noise over 80,000 pounds of silence. Because silence on a grade like that means a driver out of options. Is the noise everyone complains about worth the margin it buys the driver behind it? Next time you hear it, now you know exactly what it is buying you.